Hi, my name is Bob Brennan. I'm with International Office Technologies here in Eagan. We work in Minneapolis and throughout the Twin Cities helping people with their office equipment. And today we're going to cover copier leases and copier contracts, specifically the min-max piece of it. And hopefully I can give you some insight as you take a look at your contracts to figure out what this means and how it can affect you. It's a really tricky area. It's an area that most businesses get a little confused and they just acquiesce and sign it thinking, okay, I think this is the right thing to do, but it's really important you understand it and where the copier companies are coming from on this specific issue. So there's 4 revenue areas that copier companies have. One is the service and supplies, which we're going to cover today. The copier markup itself on the accessories and the finishers. The lease itself, which Courtney Carlson has either covered or will be covering in the future, and end of lease, purchase, buyback. Again, Courtney will be covering that as well in future videos. So service and supplies. So copier companies make the most of its profits in this area, and this is an area that the salesman has to create leverage, and this leverage is created in a penalty in the min-max area. So what they typically try to do is set you up with a minimum that you have to print and then a maximum, and if you go over that maximum you get penalized, which on the surface is really a false or a phony penalty. And you as a consumer need to understand that, because you'll see as I go into this explanation further on, their cost and expenses are baked into this. So the more you print, in theory, the more revenue they're going to generate. Yeah, they're going to have more expenses, but that's all baked into it and offset already. So, but I'm going to go into details on that. So again, you have a minimum page that they try to produce and a maximum to get a penalty to kind of get you to buy into a higher page count at a price point that is somewhat discounted in their math, but actually isn't. And again, I'll get into that. So in order for you to have an understanding of this, it's really comes down to what's the copier's cost, the copier company's cost on the service element of it. So they have two major elements. One is toner, and their cost between distribution, everything else, is between 0.02 and 0.03 cents. I'm sorry, 0.03 tenths of a cent per page. And then we have the service and a maintenance element, which is 0.06 tenths or 6/10 of a page or 7/10 of a page as well. So reasonable markup in this industry is probably between 20 and 30%, and that nets out somewhere between 1.2 and 1.3 cents a page as it relates to, let's say, a monthly usage of around 6,000 pages. Now this may be higher, if you have a minimum. So if you're in like a 2,000 page range, it could be substantially higher, maybe 1.6, 1.8 cents a page. And the reason for that is it's more on this part right here. Your service and maintenance tends to go up. Their cost is still right in this neighborhood, but your service and maintenance cost tends to go up for just your cost to do a trip charge to go out to a device is still pretty substantially high. So they have to pad this. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how they're covering their costs in that way. So how do copier companies make more money in this area? So a crafty salesperson is going to say, hey, here's the deal. Sure, your volume seems to be right around that 6,000, but we really don't want to have to penalize you if you go over. And it's okay if you're a little bit below that, obviously, but if you go over, we gotta nick you for 0.5 of a cent a page, because hey, you're using more toner, and hey, it's more maintenance and everything else that goes with it. Well, I mean, that cost is already covered over here. So why they're coming up with a penalty as it relates to your usage is strange. And if they did pick out the right machine for you in terms of the machine being overworked, well, that's their fault. They need to work with you better on that to pick out the right machine. So net is this. What they try to do is they come to you with a scenario where they say, hey, you know what? Rather than go with a lower rate and risk the penalty clause, if you will, What you really should do is go with a slightly higher rate of, let's say, 1.6 cents a page, and we'll go 8,000 page minimum, okay? And there's no max. All right, so they're basically pulling out an extra $2,400 during, let's say, a 4-month contract in this scenario, or it's an extra, I think that's out to be an extra $50 a month would be an example. So that's kind of how they do the funny math as it relates to that. So if you're using a production machine, these numbers are all increased. The margin may not be as high, but your numbers are increased that way. And we'll get into more detail on that. But basically what we do, and we'll cover this in another video, is we just charge a flat fee, period. And it's fair for everybody. The more you use, the more revenue is generated for us. But our expenses are going up, but again, it nets out to be about the same. So I think the fairest scenario on this is to have a standard low price, whether you use toner or not, so to speak, and it's the most fairest part of this program.